ये भी नोटिफिकेशन है
क्या? It's cool. I hope both the teams are prepared. Given that, first speaker proposition whenever you're ready. First speaker proposition. Hello, am I audible, guys?
You
What's
are
happening? Shagre, Vani, Shariska, first speaker whenever.
Good morning, esteemed judges, respected opponents, and fellow debaters. I hope this day finds you in good spirits and ready for a stimulating exchange of ideas. I'm Speaker 1 from the Tri-Sync team, which is in human exploitation.
Did she leave the meeting? I'm not able to see her.
Yes.
Vani, you can wait. You can restart your speech. I think there are some internet troubles. No worries. Just restart your speech and start whenever you're ready.
Okay. Good morning, esteemed judges, respected opponents, and fellow debaters. I hope this day finds you in good spirit and ready for a stimulating exchange of ideas. I am Speaker 1 from the Tri-Sync team, which is in favor of the motion. Recognizing private property rights towards along a human exploitation. Private property rights are the cornerstone of individuals' liberty and economic prosperity. The ability to own, use, and dispose of property as one sees fit is essential for fostering innovation, encouraging investments, and ensuring personal freedom. Throughout history, societies that have experienced remarkable economic growth and development by allowing individuals to own prosperity, we empower them to make decisions about their lives, promote entrepreneurship, and create a stable environment for economic activities. Private property rights provide the foundation for a thriving capitalist society where individuals can pursue their ambitions, leading to overall progress and well-being. While private property rights have undoubtedly contributed to economic growth, it is crucial to acknowledge the dark side of this concept. Recognizing private property has often led to the exploitation of resources and people, creating vast inequalities within societies. Historical powerful elites have used property rights to consolidate wealth and maintain control, leading to social unrest and conflict. Moreover, the emphasis on individual ownership can hinder collective efforts to address pressing issues such as environmental degradation and social welfare. The excessive process on private property can perpetuate a culture of consumerism, leading to overconsumption and ecological crisis. We must consider alternative models that balance individual rights with social and environmental responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker, for that speech. Opposition for Speaker, you have a minute to prepare.
Thank you.
Opposition for Speaker, whenever you're ready.
Could you please give me a countdown?
Sure. You may begin 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Private property rights. Let me first define it, ladies and gentlemen. It is an individual or private organization owning an entity without the interference from other than themselves. That's the definition that we stand on. And we as the opposition provide the status quo that recognition I would like to state that private property ownership has played a crucial role in fosterizing economic development, in incentivizing innovation for incentives for all of the people, providing individuals with a high sense of security and whatnot. These 3 points will be later elaborated, and my second speaker will give perfect examples for the same. Now, what results in human exploitation is what the proposition in this debate fails to understand, that private property is not the first step. Here, there is socio-economic factors, there are power dynamics, and in all of these aspects, I repeat, private property ownership is not coming as the first step. Now, as I stated, we as opposition have the crux that private property ownership as the first step has led into a great history of economic development, economic prosperity, and whatnot. Let me give you a few details of it in my first argument. First argument would have the point of economic incentives. Strong incentives, not only for the businessman who's owning that private property, but also for the economic prosperity of a country is achieved through the ownership of private property. Not only this, wealth generation, all of the employees, all of the people who are there in that specific business are able to have a stabilized, secured wealth generation with the help of private property ownership. Is there any kind of human exploitation? Clearly and efficiently no, dear speakers. And third and most important point is of innovation and entrepreneurship. We in India can clearly see the wave of entrepreneurship right now today, and it is all thanks to the private property ownership and how it is contributing into a fruitful society. Human exploitation is nowhere to be found, dear ladies and gentlemen. I question the upcoming speakers of the proposition team to give us a long history of, has private property ownership really resulted in human exploitation? As we as opposition would like to give a history of our own. In the medieval India, private property ownership started a way of fundamental growth in Indian society and to provide a baseline structure for India's economy. Then after independence, through Article 31, we get to know how private property ownership was legalized, and it resulted in so many businesses, so many foundations being formed. And now, as I stated, the present India, where entrepreneurship, private ownership, all of these have resulted in a massive wave of all of the business and all of the businessmen being successful, resulting in a financially stable environment, resulting in a non-human exploited environment. Now, I want to make one statement very clear as the operation team, that blaming private property ownership as the first step itself for human exploitation is clearly baseless, because there are many other aspects that the proposition needs to understand, and that we as the operation are trying to convey in this debate through our arguments, through our crux. And for all these very reasons, dear ladies and gentlemen, this motion must and must fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker, for that speech. A minute given to the next speaker. All right. Second speaker proposition whenever you're
Good morning, everyone present here. I'm Kushak Sharma from the motion of the statement. Private property is exploit. It being a very bad act because it exploits the need of a needful person. As the opposition said, private properties act helps to boom the entrepreneurship and helps entrepreneurs to boom their scale. But it also exploits the small scale workers or the poor people to work under them, because people make money and then exploit the need of the small people. They make the dominance on the small people to work under them. The poor people are needed to be worked there because the big businessmen are doing the same job to be exploited. But if the private property act is not to be there, then the small scale worker have to be the skills that can do, but the big scale workers are not doing that have to, because they are exploiting the small scale worker by having the enormous power of the property. If the private property act is not to be there, our country will be boomed so soon, because the big businessmen are make their dominance on the small to exploit their small needs. As my partner said, it's an act that is not to be there. It is, but it is there. What can we do so now? Private property is a power for the powerful people. They use there as a weapon to exploit the small scale workers. It is not to be good people exploiting resources. It's not. If a person exploits someone's basic need, it is not to be there. If someone exploits someone's needs, if someone exploits some basic needs, then this act should not be there. The life of a small scale worker is exploiting because of the big businessmen and the big entrepreneurs, because they are exploiting the basic needs of the small scale workers by just purchasing the enormous power, by purchasing the enormous, then they do not need to be. They are exploiting the natural resources because natural resources are just limited, and they are just, because they have just money, they are just buying and buying it. They didn't even need it, but they're just buying it to show their power and their growth. But if they don't, so the small workers and the needed people can pursue the same property in the needed rights. But the big powers are pursuing that and do not do that. So if the big powers didn't do that, so it will be a great option to the small scale workers to exploit their skills and to boom very clearly to be there. If the big powers are not to be there, then the small scale workers can do their work in the same property they are doing. the same land they are doing. The resources are limited, but they are not doing that so because the small scale workers are bounded to work under the big entrepreneurs because they are needed. Who make them needed? The entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs make them needed because they have enormous power. If they did not so, that will be not be the great option. I'm ending my line with this. Thank you.
Thank you, speaker, for that speech. A comment given to the next speaker. All right, second speaker, opposition, whenever you're
So please give me a countdown and tell me if I'm audible properly, if my network's
ready.
fine.
Yes, ma'am, you're perfectly audible. You may
Okay.
begin your speech in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You can take away my privilege, you can take away my gold, but you cannot take away the freedom of giving me and my community the things that I took years to uphold. You can take away my blood, you can take away my bones, but you cannot take away the love and affection that my legacy upholds. Now, we live in an era of entrepreneurship and dreams where everyone has a dream of owning a successful private business and passing it down to their family. Now, this whole culture makes all of us visionaries, makes all of us dreamers, and this would simply not exist if the existence of private property rights was not there. And that is why me and my team believes that recognizing private property rights was definitely not the first step towards exploitation, but the first step towards development. I would like to mention how the Constitution of India provides us a constitutional right to trade in business where we can own privately owned businesses and own a legacy of ourselves. Now, if a whole constitution of the biggest democracy of the world, the most successful democracy of the world, is giving us this right, how are we exploiting people? A GDP of trillions of dollars. How are we exploiting people? We are giving people the opportunity to build something of their own, to make them something of themselves. And that is why private property and the ownership of private property makes us dreamers, makes us people with big vision, not exploited. I would also like to state a few examples on how apps like Zoom, the app we're having this debate on right now, Google, Tesla, publishing houses like Penguin, companies like Samsung, Apple, and whatnot are all, guess what, privately owned companies. None of them are owned by governments. Now, when one person saw a vision and gave it out to the entire world, we entered into an era, and every era keeps changing just like that, and it would not happen if we did not have the right to private property. Now, it also provides us a sense of ownership and belonging and the true definition of entrepreneurship. We live in India where families' biggest moments of pride is owning land. Our fathers work so hard all their lives just to end up in buying a little piece of land that they will pass down to their children. Now, that is what private property does. It empowers us. It makes us feel more powerful and not vulnerable to all the problems that we are facing in the world. And that is definitely not exploiting us, it is developing us. Also, gold jewelry that mothers give down to their daughters. They would not be able to own all that gold jewelry if there was no right to private ownership of property. It is not exploiting anyone, it is just a simple definition of love, affection, and purity. Again, we live in a world where people are so obsessed with having proper education. Now, all of us, all the people in this meeting right now, I am 100% sure that all of us went to private owned schools. Now, why is that? If private property is so exploiting, then why do we choose to go to institutions built by privately owned individuals? The first speaker came here and said so many things on how the ownership of private property is the cornerstone of liberty and prosperity, innovation, investments, personal freedom, economic growth, and empowerment. Well, thank you so much, ma'am, for agreeing with us. She also, again, hypothetically mentioned that it causes social unrest and conflict. Well, I think that it causes a sense of collective belonging and togetherness, if anything. The second speaker again came here and said that it exploits the need of people, but again did not state any examples on how that is possible. He again came here and said words like dominance and working under someone. Sir, even when you go work under a government institution, you are still going to be working under someone because that is how society works. Private property and the ownership of it is not exploiting anyone by working under someone. It is nothing but freedom. It is nothing but freedom for giving your family what you are earning. I would like to end my speech by saying you take a small person with dreams and then tell them that you're going to be stuck in this world forever. That person is never going to be a visionary. But the second you tell them that you have the right to own something, to build something of your own, that is when the country takes a path to develop. I would like to end my.
Thank you, speaker, for that speech. A common minute to the next speaker. All right. Third speaker proposition to close the case from side top.
Okay, I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am. You are.
Okay, great. Greeting to the all of you present here and my birthday opponents. Okay, the first legislation in India related to the parental was the Act of 15 to 1856. The objective was to encourage and innovate the dissolved secrets of their investments. Later, to grant exclusive privilege, a fresh legislation was introduced as the Act of 15 in 1859. The theory was rooted in the laws of nature. That law identified was the permit individuals to appropriate and exclusive to restrain the land of their material resources. And if we talk about the history or theory, so through the French Napoleon Code of 1804 was the first government state act of the modern time to introduce the notions to absolute ownership into the status. Protection of personal property and rights to execute it exist in the medieval Islamic laws. Friends to adopt legal system tightly frustrate the properties of ownerships individuals. Now, if we talk about the history of the deed, so the word of property in everyday uses refers to an object owned by a person, like a car, a book, a material of things. The relationship between a person and was to be in law was concept acquires a more notion and factors to consider itself the nature of the word's objective. The relationship between the person and the object, the relation of a numbers of people in many more ways in relations to the object, how the object is regarded within the privileged political systems. Non-legal or document properties right are known as the informal properties of the right. These informal property rights are not decoded or documented but recognized as among all long registrations for their verification of degrees. Okay, if we now talk about the justification, so there's a private properties is an effective way to manage the resources in a disciplined manner and basic allowing. Okay, the private property is a powerful initial for the owners to pull their properties at the ancient times. The private property is an important source of individual automobiles, giving the individual independence and identical estate for others. Private properties as being in a discipline allows individuals to exercise freedom against and others and against the governments. The private property can be used in many ways that harmless to others, such as a factory owning, consuming the products for the other people's. Maybe it's very useful to us. Okay, so I would like to wrap up my speech. Thank you for listening with patience.
Thank you, speaker, for the fine speech. Last speaker from OP gets a minute. All right. Last speaker opposition to close the debate.
Yeah, please give me a countdown.
You may begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's take an example over here. I'm a private owner of this pen. I want this pen to be sold out to millions of people. I want this job and this private ownership of mine to result in economic growth, result in a baseline for an innovative pen, result in a strong chain of fundamental growth. This is my private property ownership, and this is what we as the operation define as private property ownership. Now, this same ownership, I blame this single start of this idea of the pen as the result for human exploitation. I result this one startup idea as the first step to result in so many atrocities of human exploitation. That is what the opposition, that is what the proposition has been doing in this entire debate, neglecting socio-economic aspects, neglecting illegal protection, neglecting lack of education, neglecting inequalities. These are the aspects that result in exploitation of humans, and not this first step of starting a private ownership. Ladies and gentlemen, I, Arinder Jha, will be concluding this debate, and I want all of you to focus on my argument number 1. Let me re-establish once again what private property ownership brings to the table. Firstly, it results in job creation. Lacks of jobs, not only in India, but in all of the countries, is with regards to private property and its ownership. Wealth generation for people. A minimum salary of 30,000 is there for all of the people who are a part of private property, who are a part of these private property, privately owned businesses, and results in successful careers. Let's not forget how physics wala, as all of us are very familiar with it, resulted in a baseline, in a new series of education, and how all of the teachers who did not get the respect are getting a new recognition, are getting a new successful career with the help of this privately owned organization. And there is one more thing known as the multiplier effect that is also a thanks to private property and its ownership, because in the multiplier effect, the income generated by the employees is divided amongst the local community. What does this result in? Local harmony. What does this result in? All of the people having a fundamental growth. And is there any significance of exploitation of humans? Clearly and efficiently, no. Now, before I move on to my next argument, I want all of you to focus on some really important rebuttals. Speaker 1 of the proposition team came over here. Firstly, she stated how private property and its ownership is actually helping all of us. It results in wealth generation and whatnot. And then nextly in her speech, she stated that it has a dark side and inequalities, a clear contradiction without any example. Now, the second speaker of the proposition team stated that private property exploits the need of a person. I ask how. He stated that small scale workers are exploited. I ask how. In our 10th standard economics textbook, we know there is something known as joint ventures, when all of the private companies and private MNCs collaborate with all of these small scale workers to have a joint venture. This results in their business and as well as the small scale worker not being exploited. Dear speakers, he stated about natural resources being exploited, but the motion is about human exploitation and not natural exploitation. The proposition team, dear ladies and gentlemen, over here stated so many vague aspects of human exploitation. Let me address that. In private property ownership, there are labor laws, there is legal and ethical safeguard, there is environmental regulations, and human rights are upheld. These are all of the laws and prospects of private property ownership. How can we make it the first step to human exploitation? How can we make it the first step to something as atrocious as human exploitation? With this, I would like to come to my last argument number 3, the conclusion. Just like fire and water cannot go hand in hand, the same way, blaming private property ownership, something that starts a startup, something that results in innovation, something that results in entrepreneurship being respected, economy being increased, something that results in a fundamental growth in our society, cannot be the reason for human exploitation. And for all these very reasons and aspects and examples, this motion must fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. That concludes the debate. We'll have a small feedback session for this debate right now. Swanik, if you want to go ahead and proceed and begin with it.
Yeah. So first of all, well done both of the teams. And in such period, I believe that the first team needs to work on all the aspects. I know the internet wasn't in the favor for them, for sure. And that is, we can't do anything with that. But I believe that with time, the team one, that is TriSync, can do better. Team 2, that is Games of Behest, powered by Salil. First of all, bravo on the name. Secondly, Arendra, well done. Vaishnavi, good manner. And just, I would like you to put some attention on the timer that goes off, because you both went above the time. Just that.
All right. I'd like
Thank you
to
so
give
much, sir. It really means a lot.
I'd like to
Thank
give
you.
a couple of ideas of how I feel about this motion. So, Op's whole case was this, that job creation good. The problem with that is, for me, at least for my understanding, human exploitation is in job itself. It looks like me sacrificing my dream to be a dancer, even though I'm very bad at it, even though I sing very terribly. I still want to be a singer, but I can't do all of these things because I have to go ahead and sustain myself, and I need to have a job and like in a perfectly functional economy because of this idea of private ownership, that everything is private and people need to own it. They can't share it, the state can't share it, the state doesn't provide it. And so, in that idea, proposition's whole argument would have been leaning towards more aspirational value of things instead of being narrow focused on the economy itself, and that economy is the forefront and the most important thing. Given that, I think opposition did talk about dreams, that how the aspirational value of dreams is something that can be achieved. I think it is quite contradictory to that because people sacrifice their dreams on a daily notion in order to go to a 9 to 5 job. And that is primarily because of capitalism, which is primarily because of private ownership. So, yeah, a couple of thoughts on that too could have happened. Specifically for Prop, I think Prop did a fairly good job in researching the motion itself. The only thing is that they were too focused on countering opposition on the idea of economics only. If proposition could have talked about things like um, the whole the whole value that we derive of human beings is simply of how much XYZ can earn in a society, which means that I might be the the best person in this whole world, but my value is derived from my salary, from how much assets I have, etc., etc. So in order to sustain yourself in a society, you need to have a job, and that is your value. That is your direct value, which is very, very bad for humans on a larger run, because you are then reduced to a simple commodity, a simple idea that just supplies things into society, that just manufactures things in society, and your unique identity as a human being is then gone. So in that idea, proposition could have expanded a lot. Um, I think the idea of generational wealth could also be tuned into this, that people who eventually had private property in the very first place, they were called feudal lords. Eventually, their offsprings had that same property, which resulted in a cycle of exploitation, that people who don't have a private property and whose ancestors did not have one either will never be able to have one, because of the simple fact that the people who are rich from the very beginning becomes richer and richer and richer. So yeah, a couple of pointers for prop. For op, I think again op structured the debate in a fairly nice manner. The only problem is in terms of the spirit of the motion to a larger extent. I feel that op did a good job in this debate. The only problem is this debate was not really about whether private property good bad. This is about what is human exploitation to begin with. Is going to a job exploitation for me, and like in the kind of environment I am living in? Yes, definitely. So in that idea, the debate would have opened up a lot, and a lot of arguments could be.
I would like to add something on that,
Yeah,
Gaurav.
please.
So basically, like you are right on the point that job, like someone who is sacrificing their dreams to do a 9 to 5 job is yes, is human exploitation. But then again, if it's at one point human exploitation, then other side he is working on the bigger picture. If that person is working towards his home to build his home, or if he knows that the 9 to 5 job serves as the only way to do that, so I think that's not like not proper human exploitation, but like balancing their way to success.
Definitely, definitely. Of course. I mean, just a few ideas that would have been in the debate, just to open your brains a little bit more. Thank you again for both the teams to joining this debate. We are extremely, extremely grateful for people like you and connecting people from Delhi, Bangalore, Mysore, Pune, Meerut. And it was a really nice experience to have you. And we want your patrons to continue further and further. I hope you had a good debate. I hope you enjoyed this. Ciao, guys. Lovely to see you all.
Amazing debate once again.